Okay, words of welcome. This is not only the wonderful women's celebration for voting, it's also International Women's Day. All around the world, women, just like us, are celebrating womanhood, women power, and women's right to vote, their right to hold office, their right to lead. Yay! Okay, we have a very interesting and wonderful entertaining program for you today. My name is Dorothy Dobbs. I'm just one of the many people from Sisters of Suffragette who put this thing together. And again, enjoy and thank you all for coming. And let's go.
I will be your Mistress of Ceremonies. I'm Beth Hicks. And this is, as Dorothy said, we have planned this for a long time. But like the suffragists of 1918 who continued to persist through the Spanish flu, we as the modern suffragists have continued to persist through the pandemic. And we are thrilled to see so many of you here today. We are celebrating women's suffrage. We are celebrating the fact that we're standing on the shoulders of those that came before us. Many of you don't realize that the original founders of the movement had all passed away before the vote came. And the women who received the right to vote were not yet born. So we have a debt to the people that came before us, and we owe it to the people that are coming after us to continue to stress voting rights and vote. To start us, I would like to introduce two members of the next generation. We have Julia and Carolyn Rich, who are from Girl Scout Troop 2018 down in Claremont. And just a couple of words from their perspective as to what suffragist and what voting means. So Carolyn and Julia.
Hello, my name is Julia.
And I'm Caroline.
We believe that learning about the past can help us now and in the future.
For example, we know about women's suffrage now, but what if we didn't? For example, we know about women's suffrage now, but what if we didn't? How do we know how to fight for our rights?
Because of women's suffrage and other past events, we learned that change happens slowly and requires hard work.
If we didn't learn about the past, our problems now and in the future would be much harder to solve. Who knows, maybe one of our current problems has already been solved in the past.
We also wouldn't know about so many amazing people in the past who made our lives how they are today.
We want to start out with a little bit of music. We have the Villages Chicks, two ladies who became friends and duet partners after moving to the Villages in 2018. Cassandra Barrett hails from the great state of Indiana via Michigan, and Rhonda House is from Arkansas by way of California. Only in the Villages would all those four states get together. The Villages Chicks perform throughout the Villages at social clubs, parties, and Orange Blossom Opry in Reesdale, Barbara's Barn in Oxford, and Morgan's Music Junction in Summerfield. Please welcome the Village Chicks.
Woo! Thank you. Let's go.
Great wrongs and needed righting should be righted right away. The principle of justice should be honored every day. The right should never linger for a moment right away. As
start with the past. The past is in the able hands of Carolyn Ingham from the Villages Enrichment Academy. I asked for a one-sentence description. I told you I was going to do it. I asked for a one-sentence description to introduce her, and Carolyn wrote, Carolyn is a tall, thin, brilliant blonde who has been teaching women's history at the Enrichment Academy since it began in October of 2017. Her classes range from the pioneer women to the women in World War II. Well, she might not be tall, but all the rest is very correct. Carolyn Ingham.
To all my friends out there, please remind me to never give Beth Hicks another personal introduction. Picture this. You're a young girl in early America. You're bright and inquisitive and thirsty for knowledge. That's really too bad because you're not allowed much of an education. It isn't good for you. Society said so. You certainly couldn't go to college. No colleges admitted women. None. It didn't matter how smart you were. Again, society said it wasn't good for you. Nothing was easy for women in the past. We couldn't own property. We couldn't have a bank account or take out a loan or buy a house. We couldn't inherit from our parents. We couldn't serve on juries. We couldn't get a credit card. We couldn't keep the wages we earned. We couldn't hold office, and no matter what happened to us, we could not sue, and we could not enter into any contract. We were expected to keep quiet. We couldn't speak out at home, and we couldn't speak out at church. We married young, often in our teens, and we had to obey our husbands. We couldn't make our own decisions. We couldn't think for ourselves. We had to submit to our husband's rules, obey his commands, and accept his punishments. Accept his punishments? Yes, our husbands could legally beat us, and we had no place to hide, no crisis shelter to run to, no recourse. It was all perfectly legal. Even if your husband beat you regularly, it was almost impossible to get a divorce. And if you were somehow able to get a divorce, your husband most likely would have custody of the children. Medical convention dictated that if a married woman was discovered to have a malignancy or any other serious condition, only her husband was given a full account of the problem. Single women and widows were left in the dark. We weren't considered smart enough to understand or brave enough to bear the news alone. We lived under all these draconian laws and customs. That was bad enough, but the real problem was more insidious. The real problem was simple. If we disagreed with any of these rules and laws, we couldn't do a thing to change them. There was no way to change or improve our lot. We couldn't rectify any of these injustices because we had no vote. No vote, no voice. We had to obey laws written by men we had no role in electing. What a double whammy that was. We had to live by harsh, demeaning laws and customs, and we couldn't do a thing about it because we had no vote. We were invisible. Invisible. Does that mean we didn't achieve, didn't dare, didn't risk our lives for a cause? Absolutely not. History doesn't tell us a lot about women in early America, but history isn't just about what happened. It's about who tells the story. Sadly, our history books often overlooked the achievements of women. Do you know Anne Hutchinson? Anne arrived in this country way back in 1634. Her father was a famous Puritan preacher, and she was well schooled in religion and knew her Bible. She was devout, she was a passionate speaker, and she wanted to share the gospel. She wasn't allowed. The culture dictated that women belonged at home and that men, and only men, were allowed to be church leaders. Anne broke the rules. She spoke out. She was imprisoned and tried and convicted of making slanderous statements. She was excommunicated and banished to the wilds of Long Island, where she and 6 of her 15 children perished. Women are lay ministers and ordained ministers today, in part thanks to Anne Hutchinson. So thank you, Anne. We walk on floors we never swept. We waltz through doors we never opened. We stand on the shoulders of the brave, intrepid women who came before us. Do you know Sybil Luddington? Sybil was a 16-year-old girl when the Revolutionary War started in 1776. She knew the British were coming, and she rode further and longer to warn the citizens than Paul Revere did. That early American hero, Paul Revere, made it into our history books. Sybil did not. We stand on the shoulders of that brave 16-year-old girl who rode through the night to warn her neighbors. Does the name Mary Goddard ring a bell? She had the courage to print the Declaration of Independence. Several male printers said no because they knew they would be put to death if the British discovered them. Mary risked death, and she printed that document with all the signatures on it. The men who signed the Declaration made it into our history books. Mary did not. We stand on the shoulders of gutsy women like Mary Goddard. Do you know Deborah Sampson, Jeannie Hodges, Emma Edmonds? These are just 3 of the hundreds of women who disguised themselves as men and fought in both the Revolutionary War and the Civil War. Historians say as many as 750 women fought in the Civil War alone. Thousands more signed up as nurses, including Louisa May Alcott, author of Little Women, and Clara Barton, founder of the American Red Cross. Dr. Mary Walker was there also. She was a Union surgeon during the Civil War. She became a prisoner of war and the only woman to receive the Congressional Medal of Honor. There are nearly 3,500 Medal of Honor recipients. Dr. Mary Walker is the only woman winner. Women did more than just fight in these wars. They were spies, brave women like Harriet Tubman. Harriet not only spied for the North, she nursed Union soldiers, and she led hundreds of slaves to freedom. She fought so well that she was known as General Tubman. The men who fought in the Revolutionary War and the Civil War made it into our history books. The women were too often overlooked. We stand on their shoulders. So we really weren't invisible. We worked harder than any woman today can imagine just to keep the home fires burning, the crops coming up, and the children growing strong. And remember, we often did this without any appliances, without refrigeration, without indoor plumbing, without electricity. And we were pregnant so often. The average colonial woman had 7 children. And because there was no schools nearby, oftentimes, we became our children's teachers as well. Somehow, we found time to care about our society, about schools, prisons, health, and hospitals, and books, and libraries. We became activists. We saw the evil in our society, and we were determined to fight those evils. These women conducted prayer meetings in front of bordellos. They marched in front of taverns for temperance. They raised money for missionaries. They ran schools for children who had no schools. They became champions of the poor and the disenfranchised. We stand on their shoulders. And of course, these same trailblazing women became abolitionists. We distributed anti-slavery literature. We spoke out. We opened our homes as stations on the Underground Railroad. We risked our lives to destroy the evil of slavery. But we still weren't permitted to speak at anti-slavery conventions. We were relegated to an upstairs gallery, actually forced to sit behind a curtain, hidden from view. These indignities, and so many, many more indignities, led the abolitionist women to begin talking about the treatment of women. They began the great battle for equality, the great battle to get the vote, the great battle that would take more than 70 years. It all began in Seneca Falls, New York, in 1848. We know their names: Elizabeth Cady Staunton, Lucretia Mott, Susan B. Anthony, Ida B. Wells, Carrie Chapman Catt, Sojourner Truth, Lucy Stone, Alice Paul, Inez Mulholland, Harriet Tubman, and that's just 10 of the early suffragists. We stand on their shoulders, and we stand on the shoulders of many others, including all of the men, like former slave Frederick Douglass, who supported us and fought alongside us. "68 women signed the Declaration in Seneca Falls in 1848. So did 32 men. So the great battle for the vote began. It would end, finally, on August 26, 1920, in Nashville, Tennessee. We walk on floors we never swept. We waltz through doors we never opened. We remember you, ladies. We honor you. We thank you. We stand on your shoulders.
Artist song is by Cheryl Gibson. Cheryl, jack of all trades, music director, and also entire director. I tell you, we did a rehearsal last week. If it were not for Cheryl, we would still be here trying to figure out how to put this together. Cheryl got us together. And she comes from the great state of Oklahoma, currently lives in Leesburg. Cheryl will be performing "I Wish I Knew How It Would Feel to Be Free," one of the most symbolic anthems of the civil rights movement. Written by Billy Taylor, this arrangement was performed by Nina Simone during the 1960s and the 1970s. I give you Cheryl Gibson.
Y'all can clap if you like.
I wish I knew how it would feel to be free. I wish I could break all the chains holding me. I wish I could say all the things I should say. Sing them loud, sing them clear for the whole world to hear. I wish I could share all the love that's in my heart. Remove
Thank you.
We're moving on to the present. The present, also from the Enrichment Academy. She didn't tell me she was tall, thin, and beautiful, but she's still a great person. I would like to introduce Lisa French. Lisa is down in front of the stage here. And as you'll notice, the torch is being passed from the past to the present. So we still have the torch, and we're still standing on shoulders. Lisa.
I have the enviable job of moving us forward to the next 100 years, where things got significantly better. So I'm going to talk to you a little bit about what women did between 1920, which is when the 19th Amendment was passed, and 2020. Well, actually now it's 2022, but we'll just say 2021, 22, whatever, close enough. So today we are reviewing history, not the kind that comes out of a dull history book, but a celebration of the progress that women have made in this country to create a society that reflects and supports that all citizens are created equal. That's all we've ever wanted. About the time that the amendment passed, we had just passed the Great War, or what was known as World War I. And that is the first time that the United States assumed a role on the world stage. And because of our geography and economy and democracy, we remained the dominant country on the world stage for at least the next 100 years. So as we celebrate International Women's Day, we as women from America have a particular responsibility to the women throughout the world who have watched what we have accomplished and hoped that their country would follow. Now in 1920, the amendment passed, but that didn't change anything. It was a hard-won fight if you studied it, and the hearts and minds of the nation were still not in favor of women doing anything any different. And we had no power. There were at that time no women in Congress, no judges, no even mayors, except in places so small nobody cared. And so we did what we do, which was we organized and we carried on. We were inventive and ingenious and passionate and persistent. And we collaborated, which is what women are so good at, sometimes to our detriment. And we cooperated, and occasionally we crashed and burned. But we kept on going. Now, in flush economic times, women are afforded opportunities and options. There's a sense that there's enough for everybody. And that's what was going on in the 20s. And so following up on the amendment, a woman named Alice Paul, who was a suffragist, introduced into Congress in 1923 something called the Equal Rights Amendment. Now, if you didn't hear me, I'm going to say it again. 1923, ladies, that's 99 years ago, the Equal Rights Amendment was introduced. And all it said was that everybody gets the same deal, regardless of how you were born. Male, female, or these days somewhere in between. But it doesn't matter, everybody gets the same deal. But of course, nobody took her seriously in 1923, and not for many years. So it's a darn good thing we didn't wait for another amendment to continue to expand women's rights. Now, during the Depression, which was the next decade, during the 30s, the opposite was true. Things were tough. So all of a sudden, legal obstacles were started being thrown up in the path of women to control us and make sure that the men did not have anything taken from them. And so over 30 states passed laws making it illegal for women who were married to work for a wage. And those laws stayed on the books up through and until World War II, when, surprise, they needed us. Because the men were going off to war. And suddenly there were opportunities for women that had never existed before at higher paid jobs, more technical jobs, and a lot of them, gosh, we were doing a real good job. And at first the government was openly soliciting this and urging this, and they even provided federally paid free child care. I'm going to say that again. During World War II, there was federally provided free child care. But midway of the war, it occurred to them that the women might not voluntarily relinquish their jobs when the war was over. So the government propaganda did an about-face, and suddenly they were declaring that women were working only as a sacrifice for the war effort, and that they would relish returning to their positions of their highest goals and aspirations, the unpaid work of wives, mothers, and volunteers. Well, that was the philosophy that was embraced or inflicted upon women in the late 40s and the 50s and into the early 60s. So those are not years when women's rights expanded. But by the 60s, there was a whole new generation of women interested in doing what the suffragists had done. They wanted to be paid fairly for the work that they did, to have access to credit, and to have things in their own name, to have a child without losing their job, to have lives that combined a family and a career, and to be able to wear what they wanted to wear, to assume positions of responsibilities at the tables where the decisions are being made. Now in the 60s, there was a lot of argument about wearing or not wearing bras. Now today what I find confounding is we just got through with pantyhose in time for women to start wearing Spanx. Whatever. Now, by 1960, women accounted for almost 40% of the workplace, but they were earning 60 cents on the dollar. And for women of color, it was worse. Theirs was 42 cents. Now, we had been working behind the scenes for a long time, but the right combination came together when there was a commission appointed during the Kennedy administration. And a woman named Esther Peterson and her crew came together and they surrounded JFK when he signed into law the Equal Pay Act, making it illegal to pay women lower wages than men. Now this was 1963. But again, a law did not change attitudes or practices. And to this day, wage gaps still exist. It'll upset you if I tell you more. But they are slowly being eliminated, and depending on what you read, it's about up to 86 cents on the dollar. Now, the next year, the Civil Rights Act of 1964 made it illegal to discriminate on the basis of sex in employment. So this is the law that said you could not give them the job. The previous law was about you had to pay them the same. Well, the irony is that this was a civil rights bill, and in the final hours, they added the caveat about sex, being sure that would mean the bill wouldn't pass. But it did. And I think they didn't realize until later what they had done. Now, women played a crucial role in civil rights, and the Voting Rights Act of 1965 finally guaranteeing all Americans the right to vote. There's controversy today about how little credit the women are given for the work that they did in the civil rights movement. And as Carolyn really alluded to, it's not what happened, but history is who wrote it down. And that's why it's so delightful that women's studies programs have sprouted all over our country, and why people like Carolyn and I have fun telling her stories anytime you ask us, what would we like to talk about today? Now, legislation in the 60s and the 70s continued, and it greatly expanded our rights, from credit to education and so on. But the laws didn't change the culture. The women did. We stepped up and we embraced the new opportunities, and we expanded what we did, how we did it, and we're still challenging the limits and definitions of what girls can do. Legislation that's been particularly relevant lately is the work of Patsy Mink, who happened to be the first Asian American congresswoman. In the early 70s, she co-sponsored a bill that became Title IX of the Education Amendment. It prohibited sex discrimination in all aspects of education programs receiving federal support. This was literally a game changer. You see, it used to be that women were not allowed to play sports because it would damage our reproductive organs. Not because they just didn't want to provide us with any equipment and opportunities. And right up until 1973, girls were only allowed to play half-court basketball. Do we have any players here that were only limited to half-court basketball? The thought was that if we ran the full court, it was just too dangerous for our health and would damage our future ability to have children. If you ask the women that toiled in the fields for generations, I think they would say a basketball court was not a greater challenge. But women's sports began to be funded and young girls began to participate. Scholarships became available for athletic ability for women for the very first time because they had to. Before Title IX, 300,000 girls participated nationwide in high school sports. In 2020, that is 3.5 million. Now, by 2010, women were graduating high school and college at a higher rate than men. Now, you know, it's not a competition, but it's really great that women are taking advantage of the educational opportunities that are out there. Title IX created the programs that trained the athletes who became the women's soccer team that went on to win not only 4 gold medals, but also the World Cup, the only World Cup our country has earned or is likely to ever earn. And if you followed the news recently, they just had a major victory, specifying that going forward they would be paid equally. Given the revenue they are generating, there's a case to be made they should be paid more, but that's an argument for another day. Title IX also led to the wonderful story of the young woman from Ocala, Erin Johnson, who won an Olympic gold medal in speed skating last month. But it also led to the equally inspiring story of the unselfish sports womanship by her teammate Brittany Bowe. If you don't know that story, look it up. Now, by the 80s, the young girls saw the first woman, Sandra Day O'Connor, appointed to the Supreme Court, and Dr. Sally Ride launched into space. The astronaut program has grown to include 20% women and a significant number of women of color. And as of last week, the 4th woman, Ketanji Brown Jackson, is nominated for the Supreme Court. Regardless of your politics, that's a good thing. That would make 4 out of 9 justices, which is the best percentage ever for a branch of the federal government. We're almost to 50 or whatever. Now, currently Congress has 125 women in the House out of 435, and 24 in the Senate out of 100. That's as good as it's ever been. So we trust that rising generations of women will grow that number significantly. Or they'll find other ways and places to be as equally powerful, whether it be boardrooms or international opportunities and organizations. So today we celebrate the successes of American women in shifting our culture and our society towards believing that women, like all citizens, are indeed imbued with the inalienable rights of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, even if that means you want to wear Spanx.
A couple of our speakers have mentioned abolitionist and suffragist Harriet Tubman. She was born into slavery in the 1800s in Maryland. She escaped as a young adult by running miles through the forests and the fields. She subsequently risked her life approximately 13 times returning to help others. As we go into the future with the same theme of hope, strength, and inspiration to do good for one another, we too must stand up.
I've been walking with my face turned to the sun. Weight on my shoulders, a bullet in my gun. Oh, I got eyes in the back of my head, just in case I have to run. I do what I can when I can, while I can for my people. While the clouds roll back and the stars fill the night, that's when I'm gonna stand up, take my people with me. Together we are going to a brand new home, far across the river. Can you hear freedom calling, calling me to answer? Gonna keep on keeping on. I can feel it in my bones. Early in the morning, before the sun begins to shine, we're gonna start moving towards that separating line. I'm waiting through muddy waters. You know I gotta make up mine. And I don't mind if I lose any blood on the way to salvation. And I fight with the strength that I got until I die. So I'm gonna stand up, take my people with me. Together we are going to a brand new home, far across the river. Can you hear freedom calling, calling me to answer? Gonna keep on keeping on. And I know what's around the bend might be hard to face 'cause I'm alone. And I just might fail, but I know I'll try. Shine stars fill the sky. Stand up, take my people with me. Together
believe that the key to our future are young people. There are 1.2 billion adolescents in the world between the ages of 10 and 19. Youth, like this wonderful group that came from Leesburg and the other young people in the audience, are our greatest hope for many reasons. They may be 25% of the population, but they're 100% of our future. We have to remember that. Throughout history, women and girls have been real-life heroines, ones who have transformed our world using energy, intelligence, creativity, confidence, and determination. Around the world, they have dreamed big by speaking up, standing up, rising up, and fighting for what is right, being gutsy and persistent. The women in history that both Carolyn and Lisa talked about have shown us what is possible. And that's a good challenge for our youth. Today's girls are citizens of the world. They use technology to learn about and connect with others across the globe. They are aware of the many challenges facing our planet. Youth are more affected by the crises facing our world because of economics, inequality, resources of water, food, and clean air, and they will face some greater challenges than we do today. They want to make a difference because they have important perspectives. They have fresh eyes. They look at the world differently. Many youth have already proven themselves, and we've heard some stories today. And all of you, I'm sure, are aware of Greta Thunberg, who is champion for climate change. Young people are a limited source of innovative energy and our best hope for building the future. So, whether you are a parent, a grandparent, a teacher, a mentor, a friend, or a youth yourself, we all need to support young people. We must empower their imagination and encourage their initiatives to make a difference. Our focus here has been on women and girls, but we can't ignore innovative young men as well. Success, like the ones you will hear about now from Renisha, create fertile ground for change to take root. And we hope you all support youth. Thank you. And now we have Renisha Harris, who is a student currently in nursing, correct? Yes.
Hi, I'm Renisha. I'm kind of going rogue, I'm sorry. I don't want to stand on the stage. I want to stand down here in front of you guys because I'm speaking to the youth. So I want to look at you guys. I think enough people are speaking at us right now. I need people that are speaking to us and with us, okay? So cool. So I'm going to share with you guys two young ladies who you might have heard of before. So Malala, and don't beat me up if I say her name wrong. Malala Yousafzai. So she earned the Nobel Peace Prize at 17 years old. This is a young lady who is pioneering our generation right now. She's currently 24 years old, and she advocates for women's education. So Malala was a young girl growing up in her country, and she advocates for the rights of women's education as the Taliban begins to silence the voices of women. So they try to restrict girls getting education, but as we talk about the strong men, like we spoke of earlier, her father advocated that she got an education, received an education, and things like that. So in 2018, the Taliban came and they tried to silence the education and silence her voice. And so in 2012, Malala was shot for speaking out against the Taliban. Even after her encounter with being shot, Malala still went in the hospital through her recovery, and she still spoke out against the Taliban and their issue of trying to silence women in their education. She ended up winning the Nobel Peace Prize, the youngest person ever. And then we also talked about Greta Thunberg. She was 14 when she began to speak out against climate change. And one thing I look so much to Greta for is that she didn't just start climate change out in the world or began to speak, she started in her home by making changes, having her parents pick up a lifestyle that was going to be beneficial to our climate. So she did things in the secret. And so as I talk to you about these people, I want to give you guys some application behind it. So I see a lot of young women, some young men. So I just have a question for you guys. How many of you guys would, and I want you to raise your hand back because I don't want to talk at you, I want to talk to you. How many of you guys have consider yourself a world changer? So I want to see you raise your hands. Awesome. Now, the people who don't have their hand up, I want you to take your hand and go like this. Because you are a world changer, okay? You're a world changer, okay. So, one thing that I admire so much about Malala, she stood in the gap. So she realized what her identity was and who she was. So a lot of the times culture and people around us are telling us who we're supposed to be or what we need to be, but your identity is important. You need to know who you are and where you stand in that gap. Knowing who you are is going to set that tone and that pace for you to bring change in culture and change in society. Identity is so important. On top of identity, we need authenticity. Guys, I want to see you raise your hands again. How many of you guys hate fakeness or fake things? Yeah, me too, or whatever Drake said. Fake love, yeah. So that's the thing too. So if you are authentic, there is no one like you. There is no one else that can be you. Rosa Parks was not a woman who was the same as everyone else. She was authentic. She stood out. She made sure to know that this is what I stand for. And no matter how you feel about it, I'm going to do it. And because of her sacrifice today, we're living in it. And we're able to do the things that we can because of her. You also have to have integrity. Malala, Harriet, Florence, women in our generation, Greta, they are standing in integrity. Integrity is not always about a look, but integrity is about how you stand, being truthful and knowing who you are and standing in the margin and saying, that's not right. And I don't care if culture believes that this is right. I know this is right, and I'm going to stand up and fight in the midst of the margins and in the gaps. You also have to have transparency. And I know that's kind of hard sometimes, being transparent and vulnerable, but if I could take a moment and be transparent and vulnerable. Some of you guys who didn't raise your hand, I felt like that, and there are sometimes I still feel like that to this day. How am I going to impact the world? How am I going to change the world? But all the women that we talk about did not say that they were world changers or did not carry that identity. That identity arose from something that was already on the inside of them. You guys have that. That's in you. You guys have that potential, and it's up to you to tap into it and walk into it fully. So I want to just encourage you guys with this. You guys can change the world. You are world changers. Every moment that you're breathing, every minute that you're taking a step, even you just being here is going to be a catalyst to change the world. You guys are going to be in the history books one day. So I want to speak to you guys, not at you guys. And also, I want to meet you guys after. So yes, thank you.
Now at this time, we're going to have a presentation by the president of the Ocala Youth Chapter of the NAACP, Ms. Abigail Rose, on the youth vision for women in the future. Give her a hand clap as she comes.
Good afternoon, everyone. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Abigail, and today, like Ms. Katina said, I'm going to be doing speaking to you on a vision board that I hope and live up to for the women and myself as well, for us in the future. So my vision board is about education, because we didn't get the same equal rights as the males did. They got fair education. We had to fight for our education like Malala did, like Ruby Bridges did. They fought to go to the school and get the same education as the rest of the kids. So my first point on my vision board is employment rate. Because without education, we have a low self-esteem or knowledge to get the fair education that we need and how to get our education. For men, it is 11.2. They get higher education, so that means they get the better jobs. For women, the lowest was 5%. I want this to go up to be higher than the males. So I'm going to work hard to get my education to 12 instead of 11.2, which is the males. My next point is the different education spans for women. For Latina women, it only goes up to 7%. Only 7% understand and get the fair education that they can get. For women of color, it is only 6% that get their education. Asian women is 6% as well. Mostly all the women are lower than 7% of the males because we don't get the fair education that they get. My favorite point of all is pray for the woman. I'll be in 5+ years. I hope she's happy and loved living an unapologetic life. I hope she loves it. I say this because I want to see more women, more female judges, more congresswomen, I want to see a female president, not just a vice president. Because as just a vice president, that shows we can go higher and higher. No matter what we do, we can be the woman that we believe and that we can achieve. Thank you.
I would like to introduce I'd like to introduce Tanya Wilder, who is a professional musician born and raised in Eustis, Florida, so she's from around here. She has opened for many people among Clarence Carter, Johnny Taylor, Mary J. Blige, so she's the one that you listen to while you're waiting for the star act. Dynamite singer, and also a song you're going to recognize.
I see they put me with the young, being at 54. I'ma take that. Hey, you turn that up something for me. Turn it up for me. I want y'all to hear it. What you want, baby, I got it. And what you need, you know I got it. All I'm asking is for your respect when you get home. Hey, baby, when you get home. Turn it up. Just a little bit. I ain't gonna do you wrong while you're gone. I ain't gonna do you wrong 'cause I don't wanna. Give me my promise when I get home. Just a little bit. Hey baby, just a little when bit. You get home. Just a little bit. Just a little bit. I'm about to give you all of my love. And guess what? In return, honey, give me my promise when I get home. Y'all just get up and dance with it 'cause all we need is a little respect, right? And we gonna earn it, we have it, and we gonna get it. Come on, put your hands together. Let me see who I'm gonna pick out the crowd. I think I found one. You can say, sweeter than honey. And guess what? So is my money. And all I want you to do for me is, oh, hey baby, wait to me. Wait at home. Oh, all you say, R-E-S-P-E-C-T. Find out what it means to me. R-E-S-P-E-C-T. Take care of T-C-T. When I get home. Yeah. When I get home. All the time. You keep on trying. Right feeling respect. When you get home. Talk about respect. When you get home. Talk about respect. Thank you. You guys have a nice evening.
Again, I apologize, Tanya. Great. Okay, we've heard about the past, we've heard about the present, we're looking for the future. Now what are we going to do? We have a charge to action. I would like to introduce Katina Stevens for that. Katina is the director, thank you, director of the Southern Christian Leadership Foundation for this area. She is the one that brought those very expressive, wonderful dancers that we had a few minutes ago. So, Katina, to give us a charge.
So as someone who refuses to get older, yes, but have found strength in the wisdom I now possess, I know that the women here today have worked throughout your lives to make a better world for your families and communities. Many of us are grandmothers, mothers, sisters, teachers, and friends who continue to use our energies and voices to make a difference. We work together tirelessly, and with the men who partner with us to make this world a better, brighter, and more accepting place for the generations that follow us. That's why my charge today is for the youth, the young people. As we look out over the young people in the audience, upon the hopeful faces of inventors, entrepreneurs, world changers, and community rearrangers, we lift you on today. As we hear today, countless women you may never get to meet endeavor to make sure that you get the pay you deserve for the work that you will one day do. It is our job to make sure that you know a little bit more about the world so that you know exactly how you want to change it. You may hear it said because you are a woman, the rules are different for you. You may one day discover that your gender will clamp you to a list of expectations that you did not create, but are expected to follow without protest. These views will shock you, upset you, but never let it be something that silences you. You must know that your talents, skills, abilities are not limited by your gender. As we who confidently stand before you on today, and as you will too in the near future, whether at home, at school, in your community, or before governments, we charge you today that when it comes time to stand up for matters that count, know that your voice will not only be welcome, but necessary. Some may have the audacity to tell you that there's only one way to be a woman, and that you are or will simply not be enough. But we charge you on today to know that beyond any reasonable doubt, that you were born more than enough. How you decide to carry yourselves, how you decide to get into good trouble, will always be the right way to do so. Besides, well-behaved women never made history anyway. Love every aspect of yourself as much as you can. Trust your judgment and own your choices, whether right or wrong, whether good or bad. Study what interests you, and not simply because someone says you should. And if you decide that you want to learn something else instead, just know that it's okay to change your course. It's okay. Be friends with people who inspire you to try more, to do more, to be more. But be okay with letting friends go when your friendships bring you more pain than joy. Work hard, work often, but always strive to do the work that serves not only you and your interests, but also for the benefit of those coming after you. When those times come in your life, and be prepared for them, because they will come. Those times of feeling like the problems of the world are too much for one person to bear, and you find yourself questioning, how can I make a difference? You should know that just by caring, you have already begun to put change into motion within yourselves to be moved to action. No one person can solve the big issues we all face, but collectively, we can move mountains. Every effort you put into making a difference will get us all just that much closer to a better tomorrow. We all have the opportunity, whatever our age, to work with the women and the men who share in creating that a better society for all of us. As you grow from children to teenagers, from teenagers to adults, and from younger adults to seasoned seniors, know that you can always do more than you think is possible. Find strength in the things that scare you, and always trust that little voice inside nudging you to take a chance. The suffragists remind us how urgent it is for everyone to have the right to vote. And that remains an important issue more than 100 years later. Now, what we want you to do is to use your voice. As it says on today's program, your voice matters and you will be heard. Thank you.
About 2.5 years ago, I got a phone call from a woman by the name of Jill Moss Greenberg. And she said, let's plan some fun things for the centennial celebration of the women's vote. Then the pandemic came and we persisted. Our closing comes from our foundress, Miss Jill Moss Greenberg.
I was supposed to say 2 words, so I'll say 6. I'm so thrilled that we are here today. We know the suffragists pioneered through the pandemic of 1918. We persevered through the pandemic of 2018, 19, 20, 22. We're here, and we've persevered as they did, and we've learned to, it's so wonderful today to take your pictures and not have to say smile, but not see your smile through the masks. We actually can now be open and out here and have this event together across our diversity. And I want to welcome and thank the chairperson of this event, Dorothy Dobbs, and our wonderful Mistress of Ceremonies, Beth Hicks, and all the women who represent the groups that are on your program, the Sisters of Suffrage. Could you stand or wave, Sisters of Suffrage? All these diverse organizations have worked together to create today and tomorrow. We're so thrilled, and there are many who are not here right at the moment. I want to thank a couple, and Beverly Steele, I know she's here, she recommended Tanya, who just did that amazing Song of Respect. So the participation from young performing artists is here too. We have a chance, I think this event is different from maybe any that's ever been held in the villages. The wonderful part of it is that it's a direction for the future. The groups that were part of and are part of Sisters of Suffrage are from clubs in the villages, including now participating today, groups like Women Doctors, Amazing Jewish Women, AEW, all of the Freedom Force, all of these groups, but also groups outside of the villages, like Southern Christian Leadership Foundation, Delta Sigma Theta Sorority, young performing artists, so that it's a collaboration between villagers and those in our communities around us, as it should be, and as women throughout history have done so well in working together for the common good. We thank you for being here. As the words of Mary Church Terrell and Delta Sigma Theta, we're lifting as we climb. As we go forward, we lift others with us, behind us, and next to us. So we are going to now emulate the suffrage marches. And I have to say one thing as I'm looking down at my favorite suffragette right here. For the men who are partners, my husband is a suffragette, his hat, taking pictures. And Kathy Morgan's husband now made a suffragette hat too, to be suffragette too. And thank another suffragette, Jim McGraw, who has been shared with us his wonderful antique printing machine. If you haven't printed your souvenir with women's quotes over there, please see Jim when they're over. But for now, we are going to emulate the suffragists and have a suffrage parade. We are going to line up behind our chairperson, Dorothy Dobbs, who will take the torch and lead us forward. Doesn't she look like the Statue of Liberty? She will lead us forward. If we can line up, if you're from an organization that has a banner or a sign, this is the time to hold it and use it as you go forward in the parade.
Ready? Let's go!
And woman, hear me roar, the number's too big to ignore, and I know too much to go back and pretend. 'Cause I've heard it all before, and I've been down there on the floor. No one's ever gonna leave me down again. Whoa, yes, I was, but it's wisdom for the pain. Yes, I've paid the price. But look how much I gave. If I had you, I can do anything. I am strong, strong. I am but never break me, 'cause it only serves to make me more determined to achieve my final goal. And I'll come back even stronger, not a novice any longer, 'cause you deepen the conviction in my soul. Oh yes, I'm wise, but it's wisdom for the pain. Yes, I paid the price, but look how much I paid. If I had to, I can do anything. I am strong, strong. I am invincible, invincible. I am woman. I am a woman, watch me grow. See me standing toe to toe as I spread my loving arms across the land. But I'm still an embryo with a long, long way to go until I make my brother understand. Oh, yes, I'm wise, but it's wisdom for the pain. Yes, I paid the price, but look how much I gave. If I had to, I can do anything. I am strong, strong. I am invincible, invincible. I am woman. I am a woman. I am invincible. I am strong, strong. I am a woman. I am strong, strong.